Welcome to Catch Up with Chuck from the Rural Futures Institute at the University of Nebraska. I'm Chuck Schroeder. I'm Executive Director of the Rural Futures Institute. And no, we are not today coming from my office on the East Campus of the University of Nebraska. We're in Boston, Massachusetts at Tufts University, and I'm joined today by two very special guests, Dr. Tim Griffin, who's become a great friend of ours, who is Division Chair for Agriculture, Food, and Environment here at Tufts, and one of his students, Kelly Kundratic.
Good job.
Did that well?
Very good.
An outstanding student from West Virginia who came to Tufts to pursue her educational ambitions. And we just have been having a great time. We've been very, very grateful for the opportunities we've had to be both at Tufts and at Harvard Law School this week with some of my team members from the Rural Futures Institute. So Tim and Kelly, welcome to Catch Up with Chuck.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, this has been a very exciting week for the Rural Futures Institute, connecting rural and urban in this very urban setting of Boston. But we've also had the opportunity to think a little bit differently about community and what community leadership looks like as we've been able to visit with top flight scholars and students at these two legendary academic institutions. Tim, you started all this. You showed up at our offices in Lincoln a little over a year ago, based upon your longtime friendship with Teresa Klein on our team. You were there on a sabbatical, and we started this conversation about the differences and the potential connections between our institutions and our people.
Right.
So tell us what sparked all this on your part. You put in a lot of work.
Well, I think part of what sparked it was the two things you already mentioned. It's like you have to show up, you have to talk to people, as we were discussing yesterday.
Right.
And this idea that the interests and opportunities in urban and rural areas are somewhat different, but they're not totally different. There is overlap there. People who live in different environments have the same interests for them and their families and their businesses and all of those kinds of things. And looking for opportunities to have, maybe that larger conversation about what do we want in terms of a linkage between those two things is something that, having lived in rural areas for a good part of my life and now living in an urban area, is like I don't necessarily see those as two totally different things. And certainly here in the educational program that I run here, it's we are pretty deliberate about having conversations that sometimes we don't understand this, so let's go talk to somebody who does understand it. And this, I think, is just a kind of another way of doing that. And then, as you mentioned, I have a long history with the University of Nebraska, having graduated there twice in the 80s. So, and still have lots of my wife's family still lives in Lincoln and the surrounding area. So it's a place that we're very familiar with, and having experience in both. Again, I see a lot of commonalities, and this is an opportunity, I think, for us and RFI to actually talk specifically about what that might look like.
Well, the context that you bring to these conversations, Iowa kid, Nebraska, but you've also lived around the world and in some very rural settings,
Yeah.
and had the opportunity to get to know people in each of those settings.
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, we are so delighted to have you with us. Our audience has had the opportunity through the course of these Catch Up with Chuck episodes to meet a number of students that are high ambition, high achievers, and they always want to know, who are you really? What do you think about? Why are you here? So you come from West Virginia, a very rural state. Here you are at Tufts in a very urban setting. Talk to us a little bit about your upbringing and what brought you here to pursue your ambitions.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me. This is a really great opportunity. Thanks again, Tim,
Sure.
for extending that. So I spent a lot of my formative years in West Virginia in this very rural setting, but actually I have a lot of ties emotionally, and I'm originally from Maryland and not far from the Baltimore area. So this rural-urban divide is a lot of where I call home. My family is also from very rural Northeast Pennsylvania. Grew up on a dairy farm with them doing that. So this rural-urban area of conversation is really actually where I feel really comfortable in understanding the complexities of the issues that are in urban areas and the complexities of issues that are in rural areas, and I found a lot of comfort there.
Well, your legend has already been growing as we've heard about some of the things that you've been doing as a student already to connect rural and urban, and creating conversations, at least through the internet, with people to help build that conversation. So we're proud of what you're doing. Listen, okay, Tim, the cat's out of the bag. You're an alumnus of the University of Nebraska, so you're not just speculating about agriculture and rural culture in this country and in the Great Plains. But you chose very purposely to bring your career here to Tufts, here to the East Coast, the heart of Boston, Chinatown, about as urban as you can get, where you do have this audience, if you will, of students of very high talent, mostly urban, long-standing reputation for being a student body that is pretty committed to let's go change the world. Tell me why you chose to do that. You had many options.
Well, partly it's exactly what you said. It's because it was clear to me, having met the students when I came here actually to interview, that was their goal, was to change the world in some way, and it might be trying to change the whole world, or it might be just trying to make positive change in a smaller part of their own world. And a lot of that, all of the aspects of the food system, agriculture being one of them, but many others, there's lots of needs in that to make positive changes. And it was very apparent the first day that I came here that was kind of their attitude, which is very much of interest to me. And as I told Connie yesterday, that's why I came here, was that initial set of interactions with students. I was a federal scientist. I had a great job.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily need to come, but it was very clear that it was a much different path than I was on, where I was, it was science 24 hours a day. That was my primary job, but I had done teaching. I had worked with students a lot over decades. I mean, I started teaching actually as an undergrad in Lincoln, and then I really enjoy that. But I also worked with farmers, but that's also engaging in education. Did that for a while, and this was, I'm not the most strategic person in the world, so it's not like I had a career path set out in front of me and I'm saying, okay, now I want to go do this.
You and I are kindred spirits.
Yeah, we definitely are.
Some of our audience would know.
It was more like I saw this job announcement and I asked my wife Janice, do you think I should apply for this? I knew of the program here. I knew of it really since it started in the mid-90s. So, and recognized immediately that it was very different from any program anywhere else in the United States. And at about the time I came here, it went from being a very small program, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 students a year coming in, to 30 a year, because the interest in all of those aspects just exploded. And our interest is in how those things are linked together. It's not in any one particular area, it's how are they related. So, but the cat is out of the bag. I mean, I came here for the students, and I show up because of the students. So.
Well, okay. So as we talk about legends, certainly your legend as an effective teacher is all over this campus, and we've so enjoyed getting to know some of your colleagues over the last couple of days,
absolutely.
Who not only enjoy your passion for your students, but by the way, your capacity to bring a reality check on what really goes on in our part of the world, if you will, and that is valuable to all parties. So, okay, Kelly, by your presence here, you really have already established that you're a bridge builder, and we talked about that just a moment ago. You really are bringing forward a set of talents and an ambition right now during a time when our society is so polarized on so many issues. So we have a lot of hope for your success. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your ambitions career-wise and how you might bring parties together for a little more civil discourse on the pathway our culture's going.
Sure. To shed a little bit more light on the project that we did, a couple of other colleagues and I designed this project in partnership with West Virginia University, my previous institution, and it was a project to talk about the political in the aftermath of aftermath's a harsh word. That's because that's not what we were doing.
But there were things being, rural people were being characterized after the last election. I mean, that's just a fact.
Right.
In a way that was kind of troubling.
Right, and being here in such a urban setting and being around my other students that were visibly upset, and also seeing what was going on in rural areas, we decided to really build these conversations in an atmosphere of food and environment and agriculture, and talk about things that connected us, but also in this political sphere. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I had some really brilliant colleagues that also should be recognized for that endeavor. But it was quite the experience to be able to talk to other students that were also engaged in this area, and really understand and humanize each other, because we're all humans and we're all trying to really be in the same space and solve the same problems. So how can we take politics out of that? It's really it's a nonpartisan issue, food, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, I just have to tell you, what you're doing and what you just said is so consistent with our fundamental values at the Rural Futures Institute, and that is people make the difference. It's about relationships. Whatever the situation, and whether that's in a community, a location community, a community of practice, a community of people across the country that have interests in seeing our world be a better place. It all gets down to who do you know, and are we willing to sit down and learn a little more about each other. So, and Tim, I know this is part of what you bring to the table every day in your teaching endeavors. So.
Yes, very much so. I mean, it is about sometimes having easy conversations, sometimes not. We encounter that, I encounter that as a scientist. It's like there are certain things that most people would agree on, and then there are others, even in agriculture, that maybe they don't. And it doesn't mean that people who disagree can't talk to each other about it.
Sure. But it takes somebody in the middle to say, hey, let's sit down here and
exactly.
We're going to be okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, well, listen, as you know, we're already making plans for ongoing engagement and some home-and-home visits by student and faculty here at Tufts. At Harvard Law, we just had a great visit there a couple of days ago, bringing folks to the University of Nebraska, bringing some of our folks here for these conversations that perhaps we haven't had before, and where people are sort of seeing each other behind the imprimatur of the institution rather than real people. So I just have to tell you, having a chance to be here and build some of those trust relationships over the last couple of days has just been a real treat, and we are so grateful for your initiative in bringing us together, and something good's liable to happen. I see it.
I'm certain of it, Chuck.
Well, I tell you, I would like to give you the opportunity just to say a little more about your vision for these relationships that you've helped to spark.
Sure.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, and I'm always looking for opportunities, and it may be centered on students to be able to experience different types of things. So, for example, having a student or several students be able to come to Nebraska, even if it's for it's a 3-day workshop, or it's longer, it's an internship. Those types of opportunities I'm always interested in.
We had a chance to talk to some students yesterday about potentially participating in our serviceship program.
Exactly.
Which would be a really remarkable
Right, so
experience.
I'm always looking for those types of things, but then, you also met some of my colleagues here, and we do, we do education, but we also do research and kind of public impact involved in policy formulation and assessment in various ways, and having those ties to the University of Nebraska is another opportunity for us to do that. As you and I had talked, I have one recently completed doctoral student, and one just coming up is finishing on May 1st, that have had direct collaborations with faculty in Lincoln over the last 3 years. So this is just another way that the collaboration's already there, and this is just another way to make it stronger, although maybe in a little different realm.
Yeah, build out a little bit as well as up.
Right, so that's what I'm really excited about, and I see all kinds of opportunities. Some of them can be kind of quick and easy, and we want to, those are things that can be done really near term, and then what does this look like a year from now, 2 years from now? That's the conversation that we're going to keep having. So
We look forward to that.
excellent.
Kelly, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I just wanna say that coming here to Tufts was in part inspired by these rural and urban connections that especially faculty like Tim bring to the table. So I'm really glad for this opportunity and
Great.
really glad that I found Tufts.
Wonderful.
Good.
Listen, Kelly, Tim, thank you so
You bet.
much for investing yourself in the Rural Futures Institute this morning. We're deeply appreciative, and we're excited about the future that has been outlined here. Well, listen, folks, we want you to stay in touch with the Rural Futures Institute through our website, through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those tools, because we're going to be back in another week talking with real people about real places and demonstrating that thriving rural communities are a legitimate best choice for worthwhile living. Thanks for joining us.